Get
Okay.
So yeah, we send out an email blast, a LinkedIn events and stuff like that, and I posted about it. So I'm really excited to learn about the selling services because I think this also applies to me as like my little side gig too. So I don't know anything about selling services. So
Yeah, services, everyone has an expectation of what they're supposed to be, even if they can't tell you exactly what that is, right? And so being able to really clue in about, let's say that you do SEO, right? But you're talking to people about growth and everything. They might be really a better candidate for PPC or paid search or paid ads or something like that. But we sometimes don't necessarily hear everything that they say, right? Or maybe we're too anxious for the sale, or maybe we need this deal or things like that. So by really listening well and really doing some of the pre-work before the call,
yeah,
you're going to have much better results on the calls. So yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel like for I guess like what I do on the side, sometimes it's like there is no call, I guess, because it's mainly communicated through email.
Mm.
But I guess just seeing what mistakes I make when crafting those cold emails.
Yeah. So what service do you offer?
So I do like social media, like content creation. So
Okay.
I promote like skincare and makeup. So I guess just like collabing with bigger named clients or brands, I do want to like get a better ROI on those cold emails.
Can we use you as the assistant
Sure.
for some of this in your gig specifically? Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
I would love some help, so that works.
Awesome. Can I ask you a couple of additional questions just that way we can
Yeah.
make this as relevant as possible? Okay.
Yeah, of
So
course. Sorry, there's also like a leaf blower outside, so don't mind that.
totally good. And I saw George just pop in here. What's up, George?
It's gonna be
Um,
my leaf blower.
all good. Okay. So you sell, is it, walk me through that again. What is the offering?
So I promote like makeup and skincare products on social media.
Okay.
So I influence people to buy them, and sometimes I get paid like a flat rate for a post or digital rights, and other times it's an affiliate link. So I
Okay.
feel like I want to up my income through those affiliate links of like what I promote, and I
Okay.
want to partner with bigger brands to, I guess, get more campaigns going.
Interesting. Okay. Very cool. So, um, this is really rad, actually. So, okay. So you do cold emails to brands to see if they want to hire you to promote their products on your social media.
Sounds nice.
Okay. Very cool. Have you actually, we'll do this as part of it, right? Because I think that's enough. So we're going to say influencer marketing. Okay. We're going to say health or really beauty. Beauty niche, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Very cool. What do they get if they buy?
A good product. It's not my product. It's like I guess my clients' products.
So do you have any vision, like when you bring on a client, do they get a series of posts? Is it just one post? Like, how do you define the scope of what you're actually going to do for them?
Well, it really depends. So sometimes some will reach out to me with what they already have in mind, saying like, "Hey, I have a new product coming out. Can you promote this and do one post?"
Okay.
Okay. So that's one thing. Or another brand will be like, "Hey, I don't want you to post it all, but I just want the content you create, 6 videos, let's say, and can you do a package deal for 6 30-second videos?" And I
Okay.
just have full digital rights to those videos and use them however I'd like. So I feel like there's a digital rights aspect of where I'm not posting, there's a combination of the two, and there's just like a flat post.
Okay. Perfect. Very cool.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think we can start now. So yeah, that was just a little bit of background, but John is going to be presenting on the 5 mistakes freelancers make when selling services. So take it away, John.
Awesome. So thanks for everybody for coming to check this out. We are actually going to use Alyssa as a real-time example of how I do some of these things and things to think about, because I wanted to give as relevant talking points and some scripts if we get to that point as possible. So talking about my stuff is always a little bit weird because coaching is different than most other services, but this is going to be very good for what we're going to be talking about here. And I have some slides because slides are awesome in my opinion. So one second, let me pull that up.
Okay, let me make you the co-host so you can also.
Okay, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
One moment. I can't find the right one. One second.
No worries.
I have too many Chrome tabs open for just a second. One moment. Let me pull that up. Okay. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay. So talking today about the most common traps that happen when you're selling as a freelance. And this is interesting because when you're a freelancer, you don't have a big brand, right? And so a lot of the things that other people can do because they're part of a big brand, you don't always get to do because you're a freelancer, right? So we're going to be talking through some of these things because I just think that they're very important, right? It's super easy to get stuck and caught and struggle as a freelancer. And a lot of people, because they don't know this stuff, they try it for a little bit and then they decide they have to go back to work for somebody else. And largely it's due to a lack of knowledge versus actual skill set kind of situation, right? So the very first thing that we have to be aware of, right, is that when you're, can everybody see my screen? Let's just make sure we get that for, Zoom bingo.
Yes.
So the first thing is self-development and community, right? A lot of times when you're on the grind as a freelancer, you have a specific set of services that you can offer to people. And because you're bogged down looking for work, working with work, and then also trying to have good work-life balance, you don't always lean into and continuously improving that skill set or looking for other similar close skill sets that you can compile with your other or with your existing skill sets to grow. So first thing that I tell everybody is make sure that you keep honing your skill set, because the gig economy in freelancing is not going to reduce. If anything, I think it's going to continue to get larger, and being good enough isn't, right? There's lots of people. My coach used to tell me that your best client is someone else's best prospect. And so when I think about this stuff now, when I think about my skill set as like a salesperson or a marketer, I'm always thinking about, if I'm not working on this to improve my skill set, other people are. And if I want to be competitive in the marketplace, I owe it to myself to keep progressing in my skill set. So the really awesome thing about that is that a lot of improvement around your skill is going to have community. And it's also going to give you a place so that way you're learning and you also have this community, because you can be lonely as a freelancer, right? Especially with how it works now with all the digital options available. So community will normally come as part of your self-development, right? So as opposed to just sitting in the office all day long, just grinding it out on both sides of it, networking and prospecting, as well as delivering for clients, community is huge because it's going to help you grow. It's also going to kind of make sure that you're not building a bad echo chamber, right? Humans are capable of talking themselves into anything. So when you have the right community around you of other people who are, working on the same things, learning the same kind of things, it's going to make you better, right? Just hearing about their struggles and their wins and everything else. So community is huge. They can also be really great for like soft networking, looking for overlap, looking for synergy, referrals, however you classify that. That's more of what we talked about last month about like how to just network very well for your brand and for what you're trying to do. But communities are huge. I met George in a community for entrepreneurs, and now he's here on this webinar because he saw what we were posting about and he's here. So community is great for just maintaining the mindset you need to be in, and also just continuously learning. Big, huge proponent of that. The next one is really thinking about your pricing, right? And this is a struggle for lots of people because money is a subjective subject, right? My parents taught me as a kid, we don't talk about money, we don't talk to strangers, right? So if you are stuck talking about or not being able to talk about money, you're always going to potentially be spending a lot of time with people who aren't really ready to buy from you. They might be interested, but they might not be quite time there. So got to talk about money as early as possible. And this is uncomfortable for lots of people. So there's different ways of talking about this. The other next big thing is moving from how you do your pricing, right? In the beginning, you're going to probably charge hourly because that's what most people are used to, they're comfortable with, and everything else like this. But when you're charging hourly, you're still trading your time for money, which is the same thing you're doing when you're working at like a corporate gig, but you're now under increased pressure because you're out there on your own. So hourly rates are really great for just trading time for money, but ideally you want to move into project driven kind of things, right? Because that's how you go from, $60, $75 an hour to, 30,000, 40,000 for some of these projects and things that you do, because you're talking about the project itself versus the nuance of like the bulleted list of the deliverables and here's the hourly rate and things like that. So when you can move in that direction, you're going to be potentially more on the hook for the outcome of the work that you're doing, which means you really kind of need to know your stuff. You need to have some reps under your belt, but that is how you begin to sell at a premium and remove yourself from like the very tight races that sometimes freelancers are in. I know people who will lose out on a project because they're $5 more per hour than like someone else who came in and kind of just bid it as low as possible just to get the work done, right? When you can talk about, here's the project, the hours are no longer as important, okay? So it's a change in mindset. It's a change in how you think about your work. And it really requires some reps to be under your belt, because if it's your first shot working with a client, please go the hourly rate, protect yourself, right? Because when you can show this is the time we spent, this are the materials we used, you're going to always be on the same page as the people that you're working with, but it's not going to serve you for forever. So eventually you're going to want to change how you price. And that goes to also being able to talk about money very, very early on in the conversation. Okay. So the next part of this, right, is discounting. A lot of people talk about discounting to try to close deals, right? Or they'll say things like, well, if you buy today, it's one price, but the price is going to go up on Monday. That is so well known. It actually has a label inside of selling, right? It's called a type of close. And I'm not the person who says that you can't ever discount your work ever, because sometimes it does make sense, right? If going to Alyssa's very particular situation, right? If a beauty brand has got lots of products, but they want a bit of a discount on this first one, that might make sense because the entire relationship indicates that there's value, there's more work coming along and things like that. So then it might make sense to discount it. But if they just have one product, this is going to be a one-off, maybe that doesn't make sense. Okay, so really knowing when you should discount, when you should just say, hey, I don't think we can do a good job for that dollar amount. Is that what we have to work with? These kinds of things are where you can really make your conversations very collaborative, and you get to trust and you get to outcomes faster. Because when you're not scared of these topics and you can lead with a little bit of confidence and competence, they'll have the conversations with you, and you can shortcut a lot of the things that just take up a lot of time about like the chasing and the following up and everything that happens. So discounting can be a good thing. Just be thoughtful about how you're applying it and when you're using it. Avoiding the race to the bottom is the next topic, right? You're going to get people who want to just continuously chop your knees out and try to get your work for as cheap as possible. What's really interesting is you have an option. You can always say no to those kinds of deals, but those are going to be difficult to do if you don't have a full pipeline. We're going to talk more about that here in a little bit, but anything can be a race to the bottom. And when you start making it about, well, we're going to be cheaper, we're going to be better, you're actively participating in that race, about not making it about the quality of work, but you're making it about, how cheap it is. That's not going to be beneficial in the long term for you. And so when you run into that, when they're like, well, we're pretty happy with the people that we use now, Alyssa, but send us a proposal with your best pricing on there. right? Help me out. What do you mean by best pricing? Does that just mean like the lowest price? Because I don't know who you're working with now. I don't know that I'm going to be competitive.
Should,
And then,
oh, sorry.
no, please go ahead.
When, let's just say your prices aren't like defined, like finally defined, I guess, on your profile or like wherever you're getting hired.
Mhm.
And when someone initially comes to you with a campaign or a project, is it better for the freelancer if you ask them what their prices are, or is it better if you come out first saying these are my prices? Like what would get you, I guess, the better rate?
Good question. For the way that I think about this and the way that we teach people to talk about it is this is going to be dependent upon your pipeline and the other opportunities you have available, right? Because when you don't have much in the pipeline, you should have more time for meetings and connecting and networking and stuff. But like as your time becomes more of a premium, you have to qualify better, right? So in the beginning, when you don't have a lot of clients, you don't have a network yet, I try to get in there, talk about the needs, talk about the gaps, talk about the pain points, and then I'll talk about the level of investment that might make sense. But as your calendar fills up, it becomes more important to potentially lead with that stuff, right? So you might get to the point to where you're like, hey, I'm happy to have a meeting and a chat, but just so you know, this ranges from about $2,500 to $5,000 for us. Is that worth a conversation? Now, that's great when you have a lot of demand and you have a full pipeline, but it's going to be uncomfortable the first couple of times to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. Was that helpful?
Yes, yeah, it was. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So here's the other thing, right? Are you charging enough to actually support yourself? And this is why I like Numina and what the brand is trying to do, because it is weird to be a freelancer, because if you're not thinking long term, if you're not thinking about your taxes, if you're not thinking about like how you're going to grow your team and how you're going to do your marketing and stuff, you're probably not charging enough to be successful long term, right? And that goes back to the hourly rate. And when these people challenge you on your hourly rate or like why does it cost so much and stuff like this, they're not aware of all these things you have to be thoughtful of when you're setting your pricing yourself, right? So you have to charge enough to stay in business. And that means like holding aside 10 to 20% for your taxes, right? 10 to 20% for your marketing, right? You can build that on top of your pricing if you're still at that hourly rate. And so that way you're at least moving in the right direction. But long term, you have to be thinking about like these kinds of things, because they will sneak up, they will catch you. No one wants that letter from, the tax department saying, hey, you owe us a bunch of money, right? The more you can stay ahead of that, the more just peace you'll have in the long term. Okay. Next point. Oh, I don't know what I did this backwards. I apologize, but standards and good fits, right? In the beginning, you might know what you want to do, but you don't exactly know who you want to do it for or the best outcomes and things like that. That will continuously become clearer the more you work with clients, right? You're going to have some clients that you love and you like, and you want to hang out with them and you wish they would continue. And then you're going to have some clients that you wish would never call you again, right? It's important to always be looking backward at those clients and saying, okay, what do I like about these people that I'm working with that I like? And what do I not like about the people that I don't like working with? Is it the working relationship? Is it how, whatever else it could be? Because that goes to define the standard of the people that you want to work with, right? The important thing about freelancing is the pressure is all yours, for better or for worse. And one of my coaches, this is a little aggressive, but like his thing is no one's going to come save you, right? Like you have to go out and you have to do it. You have to be consistent, or you're going to reap what you sow, right? So you always want to be thoughtful about like, are you making your life harder than it needs to be because you're accepting clients that you should be saying no to, right? That becomes easier when you actually sit down and look at the clients that you work with and determine why you like them and why you don't, and what kind of questions you can ask to determine if they are someone you should work with or someone you should say no to. But it's okay to have a standard. You're supposed to have a standard. And when you can kind of talk about you having a standard without it being kind of heavy-handed, it creates trust in the conversation, because people are scared of salespeople because they're concerned that they're going to get sold by someone who wants to sell them anything that they possibly can. So when you can show up and say things like, hey, Alyssa, at the end of this conversation, we might not be a good fit to work together, and that's okay. Would you mind letting me know if it's not a fit for you guys? Right? That starts to build confidence and competence because they're not used to that. And then when you can continue to say, hey, I don't think we can do that. Should we keep talking? Right? It's kind of making the whole conversation collaborative and the process more collaborative, and will lower resistance that people are normally used to when they're dealing with salespeople. Okay. So the ability to say no to bad fits comes directly from your pipeline and prospecting, right? And I talk about this all the time. If you have 15 people that you have proposals out to, and you've had good conversations and good back and forth, you're not going to feel emotionally invested in any one of those opportunities, right? You can look at them with a little bit of detachment and say, oh, you know what? This isn't a good fit for me. I don't need to be here. Or you can say, this is a good fit, or maybe I need a discount on this because it's a really great fit. And those things we're talking about earlier, but it comes from how you're thinking about it. And honestly, how consistent you are in your outreach and your pipeline and your acquisition activities. Because if you only have 2 deals or 3 deals in that kind of last stage of proposal, you're going back and forth, there's potentially going to be a lot of pressure to try to get one of those deals closed, which means you might compromise on your standards or compromise on your pricing, right? So to be in really, really great territory, you don't ever want to turn off the networking and the prospecting, okay? The next one is referrals, okay? And everybody loves referrals. Referrals are awesome because they come in with trust. You don't have to spend a lot of time building trust with them because you have trust from the fact that you got an introduction from someone else who they know, like, and already trust. So your business can grow off of referrals, but you have to be remarkably consistent and you have to do them very well, right? A lot of people who want referrals aren't very consistent in how they ask for them or how they approach them. And they're kind of like in a reactive mode. They're just kind of waiting for these referrals to come their way. And you don't ask for what you don't get, or you don't get what you don't ask for, excuse me. So you always want to be thoughtful about it. You want to be thinking about it. And the way that we think about it is your referrals are compound interest, right? If I meet with one person who we have a great conversation and I make a good referral ask, not, do you know anyone I should talk to? That's kind of a bad referral ask because you're putting all the pressure on them and they're going to, well, can't think of anybody right now, is a normal response, right? So when you can make a great ask, which is what I think this next bullet point is, be proactive in asking versus waiting. We talked about that a second ago. And then make your referral asks clear, right? So if I'm Alyssa, right, and I'm meeting with someone who works at a beauty brand and they're direct to consumer, or maybe I know a bunch of direct to consumer marketers, I'm not just going to say, hey, do you know anyone I should be talking to? Because it's not clear enough. It's not any of these things. But when you can say, hey, I'm looking for brands who really, maybe they've tried the influencer marketing thing. They've either had some success or maybe they haven't, but they would like to try it again. And they really want to work with someone who's really in touch with their social following. Do you know anybody like that? What that does is it makes them actually kind of sit there for a second and go through like the mental Rolodex of people. What happens is when you can give that specificity, you typically are going to get better outcomes because you're actually putting them in a spot to where they can think through that bucket of people. If there is any, usually you have better results from that. So try to really lean into the type of people you want to work with, how they feel about it, how they think about it. So that way, when you're making these referral asks, you have a little bit of depth and specificity. So that way you have better results. Okay. Planning for the future, right? Freelancing is awesome, right? But it's not the end all be all for everybody, right? Some people decide that they want to go build a brand or they want to turn it into an agency, or maybe this wasn't the thing for it at all, right? And what happens is when you get caught up in just, the hustle, the grind and stuff like this, we don't always have the opportunity to kind of pick our heads up and look around and read the situation and make a determination about what we should be doing and what directions we want to work in. So anybody who's a freelancer, my first advice is kind of start thinking about what happens in 5 years? What happens in 10 years? Do you still want to be here? Do you what needs to change for it to be a good fit for you? Now, not everybody wants to grow the big thing, and that's totally okay. Some people just want to stay the small consultant with a small team. That's okay as well. There's any number of ways of getting it done, but if you're not thoughtful about it from the beginning, right, it's going to be very hard to build in that direction. Right. And so then you end up potentially working in an industry doing things that you don't really enjoy anymore because you don't really know how to get out from under it. Right. So for Alyssa, right, she's doing this influencer marketing for beauty brands. Maybe eventually she wants to start her own beauty brand with the knowledge that she's learned about what has worked and what hasn't. Maybe she wants to take the stuff and ramp it up a notch and turn into like an influencer marketing agency. So if that is the case, What do the people on her team need to be doing? What do they need to be thinking about? What are the segments that she would like to have kind of broken down? Because scale is going to break things, right? And that's what's supposed to happen. This next bullet point is like about defining your why. When I started my business, I didn't want to grow a big thing at all. I just wanted to be the very small consultant. I just wanted to build CRMs. And that was it. I didn't want to be a coach. I didn't want to be a trainer. I didn't want to do these things that I do. And then I went to a conference and they had the Zig Ziglar quote up on the screen. And it said, you can have everything you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And I'm sitting there in this room. It's a sales conference. There's like easily 1,200 people in this room. And I am just on fire. Like I'm tingling. I got goosebumps. And I just have to sit down and immediately start writing and journaling because I realize thinking about that and my why shifted right there in that moment, right? I want to build a team. I want the people on my team to have side hustles. I want them to be very entrepreneurial, but I want to pass on the stuff that 3 of my biggest mentors have given to me. It felt selfish to like not want to grow that and press that out there. So that is what I think about on weeks whenever I kind of just want to be complacent, when I don't want to do the work, right? Go back to your why about why this is important to you. And that's going to get you through the struggle periods. Okay. And this is the point I was making a second ago. As you grow, you're going to have gaps. You're going to have challenges. You're going to have things that get in the way. That is part of the process, right? When you go do new things at new levels of scale, it is supposed to break things. And as opposed to being mad or frustrated by those things, there's a great book by Ryan Holiday. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And when you can look at those opportunities as opportunities, because that's what they are, your growth causes this to be a problem. Great. How do we fix this? It's a great opportunity because without that growth, you'd be stagnant. You wouldn't be growing in the direction that you want. So it doesn't mean that you're failing always. Sometimes it means you need to kind of sit down and look at your systems, look at your why, look at your paths, and try to figure out the right ways you want to improve upon it. And sometimes you need to go have fresh eyes or hire a consultant or a coach or something along those lines. So that way you're making progress faster. So these are the biggest things that I see and hear when I'm talking to freelancers, whether it's in my direct prospecting or whether it's in my community or the other communities that I'm part of. But pricing is probably the biggest one from like a sales position because it's uncomfortable. For lots of people, it's taboo. And one of my coaches, he said this line all the time, and I think about this constantly. The real estate agent who thinks that house that's $500,000, if they think that house is expensive, how are they ever going to be able to show the value of a $500,000 house to the people that they're working with? They're not, because that discomfort is going to come through on like a nonverbal subconscious level. So if you think it's expensive, it's going to come across as expensive to the people that you're talking to. So sit down and define why these things make sense, why you charge what you charge for them, because you get to call the shots. This is your business. You're in control. So if you're frustrated because you're like, man, I'm working way too hard for not enough money, it's probably about how you think about your pricing and your value, and then also how you communicate that in your sales conversations. So that is it for the slides, which is awesome because I would rather ask questions and get asked questions anyway. So I'm gonna start with Alyssa because we were talking about her stuff specifically. What are your thoughts on this? Was any nuggets?
Yeah, no, that was really great. Thank you, John. I think that kind of comparison you did about the expensive house and the realtor really put things into perspective. And it's a really good comparison to use when determining your prices. So that helped me a lot, something I didn't even think about before. I do have a couple of questions, but I am going to open up the floor to anyone else if they have any questions for John about his presentation. So if you have any questions, just unmute yourself or drop it in the chat. Okay. I guess I'm the only one that has questions, which
it's
means
just
you
you.
do a really
it's
good job on presenting. Yeah. So when you're talking about having, a standard about the work and services you provide, let's just say when you have a good standard about, your services and the potential client really lowballs you, I'm seeing a couple of conflicting things online saying like, you should really set a good standard for yourself and be firm with your prices. But let's just say, should you always turn down a potential client's projects, or what are your thoughts on working way below your rates or even for free for a client that's a bigger brand that you know would be beneficial to have on your resume or your LinkedIn experiences?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics because there's a whole lot of people who will take the path and approach, do it for free, and then like earn the business and earn the opportunity. What I will tell you is you're still going to have that discomfort of like having to negotiate your rate and what is necessary. You're just kind of prolonging it, right? In the hopes that that conversation will be easier. It doesn't always necessarily make it easier, because where the money transaction takes place is where that discomfort is going to be, right? And so if you're not practiced, if you're not trained, if you're not thoughtful, what'll happen, right? Especially if your pipeline is shallow, you're going to be under that emotional mantle in the middle of that conversation. And they're going to say something like, Alyssa, we would love this to be cheaper. Yeah. And if you're in that emotional moment, you're going to scramble. Oh, well, we can do it for a little bit cheaper if you've not done the work beforehand, right? So I think it's on a case-by-case basis, right? Because if they have an opportunity to bring in, 3x your monthly revenue because of all the work that they can do, but they really want to kind of make sure they can serve with a place of trust, that might make sense. Okay. But it also might not, right? So I don't have a silver bullet answer for that because it's largely kind of dependent upon your pipeline, your current positioning, and like a bunch of other things. Also what you're comfortable in, right? Because some people just want a deal so that way they can say they got a deal. And then other people want a deal because they just don't actually appreciate the value of the work that you're providing.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if only big companies, put stuff like that in their budget, and it'll make things a lot easier. And then I have another question, but if anyone else has a question, just unmute or drop it in the chat. How do you negotiate your rates in a positive way that won't potentially ruin a relationship with the client? Like if you're going back and forth, is that a bad thing? It's like 2 to 3.
Good question. Good question. So you said at the beginning of the call that most of this is done through email, right? And there's email is great, but it also keeps everybody at a bit of a distance, right? So the thing to remember is that sales decisions are made emotionally and then they're justified later logically, right? No one needs a Lamborghini at all, but the people who have it, they have it for whatever reason they do, because it makes them look good, because it makes them look rich or whatever it is. Most conversations come down to this. So when you're thinking about this, we try to have a very forward-facing conversation with a conversation, right? As opposed to keeping everything in email, because with email, you lose the ability to control the tonality of the message that you're sending, right? So let's say that you send just this one email, right? And it says, not what I said. I'm trying to write that big enough so that way everyone can see it. Okay, an exclamation mark. So depending upon what is going on with that person, right, and where they put the emphasis in that statement as they're reading it to themselves, right, this message can mean different things, right? So it might be not what I said, not what I said, not what I said, right? And all these things are gonna, they're gonna have different context to the person who's reading it. If you don't get to deliver that, you have to make do with whatever interpretation they decide to put on it. Okay. Right. So the more uncomfortable the conversation, the more in person it needs to be.
I see. Okay.
Right. So that way, so let's say that you do your cold email. They say, hey, Alyssa, we would love to talk to you about this. And you say, great, let's have a call, because I want to make sure that I can help you. I also want to make sure that you're a great fit for me. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Then you get to have a call, and then you get to start this call, and you get to say things like, Alyssa, there's a bunch of reasons why this might not work, and that's totally okay. I'm here to understand what your goals are, how this might be helpful to you. Also understand about how you do your marketing around new products now. And if it's a no for any reason, would you mind just letting me know? Yeah. Right. Okay, great. And then you get to talk about it. And then the best way to talk about money is by defining the need first, right? Because until you can really kind of show them that there's a difference in the deliverable and the value and what you can expect from these things, there's no real reason for them to want to pay more than just the cheapest option.
That makes sense.
Right? Yeah. Like for most people, salt is just salt. But if you're a chef, salt has range, right? There's really great salts and they go in very specific things. And then there's bad salts, you don't ever use them at all. And they're willing to pay for different kind of things because they understand the value of it. Okay.
Yeah.
When you're talking to people, you always want to go through that kind of value, pain survey, needs assessment, discovery first before you talk about money. Because think about it like this, right? If I just do cold outreach to you and say, hey, Alyssa, I'm a beauty influencer. I can help you grow your brand. You want it or not? It's this much money.
Yeah.
Super easy just to say no.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as opposed to, hey, I think I can help you. Can we have a conversation to figure out if what you're looking for is something that I can provide? And if we feel great about the outcomes and everything else like that, can we have a call? Sure.
Yeah.
And then you hop on that call and you kind of set those expectations that a no is okay, that you don't want to chase people. And this has to be a good mutual fit for both of you. You can then go into, okay, let's talk about your marketing now, right? When you guys launch a new product, what normally happens versus where would you like to be? And you get them talking about it and talking about the struggles and the things that they've tried and the things that have worked and things that haven't worked. And so once they have all that outlined to you, once you've kind of really dug into what they really need and why it's important, then can we talk about the investment necessary to get the things that we're talking about done, right? Because you've now shown them the depth. You understand their pain, they're going to feel heard. And now you can talk about money and it's going to be easy. If you hit the money section of the conversation, it still feels frictionful. It's down to one of two things. Either you're not comfortable talking about money yet. That's why we do things like Sales Lab, because it's twice a week and it's just rep driven practice. That way people get comfortable, or you haven't built enough trust in the discovery part of the conversation. So they feel like they've not been heard and they're still viewing you as a salesperson, right? So in those moments, they're going to say things like, well, you tell me how much it costs and things like that. They're going to be very defensive.
Okay.
The whole point of the needs assessment is to build the trust and build rapport. So that way talking about money is a little bit easier because you're on the exact same page about what the needs are and the value that you're providing.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. That helps a lot. Thank you. And I think George dropped a question in the chat. So he asked, could you go over the part about discount again? When is a bad time to offer a discount?
So hold on. I didn't want to cough directly into the mic. So the way that we think about it is like, you have to think about the value of the entire opportunity, right? Because after a while, you're going to know what the average client brings to you. And then you're also going to have people who just seem like you have a lot that we could help with. You have a lot of opportunity for us to dive into and work through these ideas. And then it might make sense. Sometimes people just don't know that they can trust you yet. And it might make sense to negotiate a lower starting rate for a trial period so that you can get the business outside of the trial period. I've done that before, right? We do LinkedIn writing and outreach for certain people, and was talking with a prospect. We had a great conversation about money, right? My rate for that is $1,500 per month, and they liked it. And so we went back for the closing and got kind of just a little bit of back and forth and signing the document. And they said, hey, this seems expensive. Okay, thank you for letting me know. We talked about the budget before. You guys seemed okay with it. What's changed, right? It provides a lot of stability for me to go back and kind of, hey, we've talked about this. What's different? What is different, right? Which removes that salesiness that a lot of people are like uncomfortable about, because you had an agreement, you've had good conversation, you went and built something based around what they said that they needed, and now they're changing the game on you. What's changed? How do we get here, right? You can be very collaborative in those kinds of conversations. So they said, well, we're really trying to manage our expenses. We're not really sure that this is going to work. I said, okay, what would you like to pay? Right? Because I've already kind of done my work. I've already proposed something. They're saying that doesn't work. Great. You get the counter. How much do you want to pay for this? And they wanted to pay $1,000 per month, which wouldn't work for me. And I said, I can't do a good job for that dollar amount, guys. It just doesn't work with our systems and our teams. I can meet you in the middle, but we can only do that for a couple of months. And then we need to be absolutely clear if this is beneficial and helpful, or we need to put it to bed because it's not helping you guys out. Are you guys okay with that? And they said, yes. And then from there, it was, what does this need to do for you in the trial period to be worth continuing outside of the trial period? And they said, we need one good opportunity. I said, okay, so if over the next 3 months, we get you one great opportunity or more, we're going to be good to go at the full dollar amount. Yes. So we got them 3 opportunities in the first 90 days. And then I go in and say, guys, okay, price is going up, or we need to close it off because you guys have decided it's not a good fit. And they were able to totally see the value in moving up to that higher dollar amount. So situation dependent. It depends upon the relationship. It depends upon like the total growth. But like if you're selling services and a retainer, don't get fixated on that first month. Think about like the longevity of that client, right? And that's where the standards really come into play, because if you don't like them in the prospecting phase, in like the like get to know you phase, you're not going to like them in like the active client phase. Like it just doesn't go that way. So when you're qualifying for fit, ask those questions, right? Like, for you specifically, hey, I'm trying to think about things that would be a potential deal killer in what you do, but it's like, great. Are you going to allow me to write the posts the way that I want to write them? Because this is my audience. I know what they're going to resonate with. Or do you guys want to approve everything that we put out first? Well, we want to approve everything because it's our brand. And that might be a deal killer for you. That's okay, right? If you have the other opportunities in the pipeline. So once again, it's not a silver bullet. It's kind of about what you're comfortable with, what you think makes sense, but also kind of zooming out enough so that way you're thinking about the entire relationship and the value of that, and not letting your like ego get involved around, well, screw this person because they don't take me seriously, or, feeling like you have to discount to get the deal done. Is that helpful, George?
I guess my question is more on the when is a bad time to offer discounts? Like, or are there like common mistakes, like freelancers just offering discounts too much? Yeah. I guess that yeah.
I think the biggest discount or the biggest mistake around discounting is just making it part of your process, right? So like some people, they'll present an offer and then they don't have any real kind of like hope that they're going to be able to close that deal. And so then what they'll do is they'll just start, well, hey, it's been a couple of weeks, I haven't heard from you, right? I have an opening in the schedule or something else like this. Would you like to come in because of this? And because you're doing us a favor, we can knock 15% off. Like some people take this as like an active part of their process, which I think is not the right path to go on, because you set a pattern and a precedent when you're working with clients, right? So if you're starting off for free or at discounted rates, it's often very difficult to kind of get back on the path that you want to be on. So I think anybody who just discounts as part of their process automatically to like close the deal is probably not sharp enough on their like sales and conversational skills, or like really understanding the needs of their target audience.
That was good. That was helpful.
Okay, cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So I really liked what you said about defining your why. Could you repeat what you said again? I just wanted to hear it. So like about what you were saying earlier.
Yeah. So this is a great book, by the way. This is not my knowledge. I try to be very clear and attribution, but Simon Sinek wrote a book. It's called Start With Why. And it's a very, very great book, because when you go out on your own, it's super easy to see opportunity after a while. And you're like, oh, I'm going to go play in this pool. I'm going to go play in this pool. And there's a word for this. It's called shiny thing syndrome, right? And it's like chasing too many shiny things as opposed to staying focused on just your one path. The other side of that is that motivation wanes, right? Like you can go to like a seminar or conference and you're going to come back and be fired up, but that is going to wear off if you don't actually like take action and change your habits around the things you learned at that conference, right? So there's going to be weeks where you're not in it, right? Like the past 2 weeks, I've had some back pain, which is why I'm standing today. And I've kind of been not as invested in my work as I normally am, but every day I'm getting up and I'm thinking about like my mission, which is making sales approachable for anybody who thinks that they want to do it, and removing this idea you have to be, anything else other than your authentic self to get it done. So when I think about that, and when I think about, I want to build a team so that way I can pass on this stuff that I have learned from other people, that will get me back motivated, right? There's a lot of people who just kind of follow seminars, right? And they go to a seminar once a month, and that's their motivation and stuff like that. And those people find it very difficult to be consistent in their work because they're chasing motivation. They're waiting until they're ready to do the work. Some parts of this work you're never going to feel motivated to do. Most people are not really, motivated to go out and prospect and take those no's and take the rejection and stuff like that. But if your why is attached to that, this is not about, do I want to do this? I need to do this because this is what gets my brand out there. This is what gets my growth out there. This is going to contribute to me getting to where I want to go. Then cold calling, if that's your preferred way to outreach, isn't quite as scary, because you're not trying to talk everybody into it. You're trying to talk the right people into it. And if you're not in that right fit, thank you so much. See you later, maybe never. That's also okay. So it's one of those things, like when your why is strong, you're always able to work. But if your why isn't strong, you're going to be like, well, let me go listen to this album or this track, or let me go to the co-working space, right? You're chasing these things to get you to the place of motivation, as opposed to being naturally motivated because you know it's the path that you're supposed to be on. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, thank
Awesome.
you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. It's a great question.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? I know we're over time a little bit, but
This is fine. I budgeted an hour because I
Awesome.
like the questions on the back end of it. I like to me, like the slide deck is only going to get so much information out there, but the
Yeah.
questions are going to be, ooh, and those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So please don't hold back. Anybody have a question? If I don't have an answer, I will be sure to tell you.
Let's see. I think that is it for today. Yeah, that was a really good Q&A session, and I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did.
Cool.
Yeah, so thank you so much, John, for presenting. This was really awesome, and it was really helpful. Always looking forward to your presentations each month. So thanks
you.
everyone for coming out today, and it was a wonderful session. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Y'all too. George, thanks for coming to support, buddy. I appreciate it. That was rad.
Yeah, great question, George. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one. Okay, bye.